Hi there, Scott from Express Employment Professionals in beautiful Hilliard, Ohio. Today we had a job boost event. What's that, you ask? Well, instead of a job fair where you just sign people up for jobs, we had a job boost event which gave people resume tips, tips on interviewing and just overall search tips on how to get their next best job, whether it's here in our office or anywhere for that matter. So if you weren't able to attend, I thought I'd share it here and you can watch it at your leisure, pause, and then give us a call or make comments if you have any questions. We'd love to hear from you. So, first, why does this matter? People say, Scott, it's easy to get a job. Yeah, no one wants to work, but it's easy to get a job. Well, obviously, the job market's supply and demand. Demand meaning how many jobs are available out there, who's hiring, and supply is the amount of people in the workforce that are looking for a job. And sometimes that's in balance and sometimes it's out of balance. But the thing to remember is you're driving down the street and you see all these now hiring signs. It doesn't mean that you can just walk in and get a job. In fact, a lot of you have told me you've tried that and it's not working. You're not getting called back for interviews or you're not getting called back at all. You have no idea where your resume went or your application. Did they even look at it? So, we want to help you make the best of your job search and your time so you can spend more time working, making that money instead of just wandering around looking for a job. So, for example, the other day I posted a job and I got 266 applications in one day. In 24 hours, 266 applications. Now, obviously, I can't read through in detail 266 applications. Even if they all had beautiful resumes, I still couldn't do it. So I had to skim through. I narrowed it down, called some people, ended up interviewing, I think, 6 or 7 people. And then we narrowed it down to one person that got the job. So how do you be one of those people and not the other, 250 that didn't even get a call back? Well, you need to have a resume. If you get the called in for the interview, you need to nail the interview and then go on from there. Also, keep in mind, not every job is a perfect fit. So those 266, I mean, there were probably 100 people that could have done the job and it would have been okay. But obviously, we can't give the job to 100 people. So you got to choose the best of the best. Just like there's a lot of great football players out there, but only a very small percentage make it to the NFL. So if you're still scratching your head on why this is important, Scott, why do I need a resume? Why do I got to go through the hassle of an interview? Which, by the way, I do agree, a lot of companies ask for too many interviews. It's getting a little out of hand. But for those that are being reasonable, why is this important? Well, think about dating and marriage and long term relationships. You wouldn't walk up to somebody and say, Hey, you're cute. Would you like to marry me? Of course not. You might meet them at a party and then you check them out on social media and see what their likes are, their dislikes, check out a profile on match.com or whatever, and then you decide I'm going to ask them out on a date. And then that date you learn a little bit more about them and you think, hey, they seem kind of boring on their profile, but they're a really interesting person. And then maybe that leads to something long term like marriage or moving in together or whatever. Well, it's very similar when you're looking for a job. The resume says enough about you to get the attention of someone that may be interested in hiring you. It's not all of you, obviously, but it at least gets their attention. It's your advertisement. And then hopefully you get the interview, and that's like the first or second date. And then they get to know you. You can ask them questions and feel like, hey, this is a place that I would want to work. And then you get, quote, married or you get the job and you get your money. So there is a little bit of effort that goes into it. It's just part of the process, but it's a process that can be very worthwhile if you do it right. So, speaking of resumes, here's an example of a not so great one. And I don't mean because of the type of jobs or I'm not talking about job hopping or anything like that, but there's some fundamental flaws in this resume that would cause someone like myself to probably overlook it and to say they're in the 266, not in the top five. So, you can pause here if you want to take a look at this, but take a close look and see if you can find the 5 things. All right. Hopefully, you found the 5 things, or at least have a pretty good idea on why that's not such a great resume. So, let's talk about why this one is a much better resume. And you notice it's not fancy. I didn't, add any flourishes, or there's not a picture of the person. You can do all that. That's fine. But really, you need to start with the fundamentals. And I know this sounds obvious, but you have to have your name at the top. It has to be clear, and it has to be what you want to be called. You don't have to put your legal name if that's not what you're called, because people will call you by this when they call you back for an interview. You need to have your contact information. City and state is fine. You don't need to put your address there. That's no one's business until you get potentially hired. But at least it gives them an idea of, are you even located near the job? Or, if it's remote, then it doesn't matter. And then you need to have a phone number and an email. And whatever phone number you use, every time you answer that phone, you want to make it professional. You want to not assume it's a buddy of yours. You want to assume that it's somebody calling you about a job. Hello, this is John. How can I help you? Something like that. And then the email should be an email that you wouldn't mind sharing with your grandmother. Shouldn't have anything inappropriate in it. Shouldn't have any complicated letters or symbols. It should be very straightforward. It's okay if it's got some numbers in it and it's not your name, especially if your name is John Doe. There might be a lot of them out there. But just make sure that that's at the top. Now, the summary is optional. Some people struggle with this because you do have to do some writing, and not everybody's great at writing or describing. But if you want to use a summary, it's essentially a way to say who you are, what you want to do, and maybe what would someone say about you. They say you're energetic, you're always on time, you're friendly. It's a chance to kind of put your tagline or sell yourself there. Now, work experience. This is the most critical. You want to put your jobs, the city, the company, the dates, and then action words. I can't underline that enough. So you always want to start with the most recent job first. It could be the job that you're working at right now, or maybe you quit or you got terminated, but that has to be the most recent. And then you go in order from there. Now, if you're older and you've got 20 years of work experience, you don't necessarily have to go into this detail for all 20, but at least have the last 3 or 4 jobs that you've had, especially if they're really related to what you're trying to get next. So the formatting isn't quite as important, but feel free to use the format you see on the screen, and I'll include a link that you can use for a template. But title in bold, it says exactly what you were doing. Down below, you'll see in italics the company followed by the city and state, and then the dates down below. And it's important that when you do this, you don't have any gaps, especially ones that you can't explain. So don't skip a few years because you don't think that job was important, or you don't think it's relevant. Because the first question someone like me is going to ask is, what were you doing the 3 years between job X and job Y? And you want to be able to explain that easily on paper. And then as far as the bullet points, don't say I did this or I was responsible for this. You don't even need to use the word I. It's implied. Your resume is about you. You're not talking about anybody else. And then make sure that you are using action words. I unloaded trailers. I scanned barcodes. Could be delivered marketing projects each quarter. Those action words say what you actually did and contributed to the company, not just, hey, I did my duty or I did what I was assigned to do. Also, if you can, be sure to use numbers. Numbers are a great way to not only catch attention, but demonstrate how you added value. And I don't care if you were, mopping floors in a warehouse or the CEO, you can come up with numbers. How many pallets did you stock per day? Were there any goals on safety, or how many boxes you had to put away, or how many square feet was the building that you were cleaning? It doesn't matter as long as you can quantify or put numbers behind it. Jumping down to education, I think this is pretty straightforward. Most people do get this one right. Any high school, college, you always want to put the highest level of education first. So if you attended college, put that first and then followed by high school. If you just have high school or even a GED, that's fine. You don't have to put the date, especially if you're worried about dating yourself. I know that's a big concern out there, so don't feel like you have to put the date. And then finally, any awards and achievements, recognitions, honors. Hey, I got perfect attendance when I was at this one place. I got employee of the month at another. It's your chance to kind of brag about yourself. And if you don't have anything that you want to talk about there, that's fine. Just make sure you remove awards and achievements so it doesn't look blank. And last but not least, spell check. If you're using a program like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, it should have spell check built in. If you don't have one of those programs, and even if you do, I recommend reading your resume backwards or giving it to a friend or a family member if you're just not a good speller. Because you can have a great resume, but if you're misspelling a bunch of things, it says that you really don't care about what you're doing. And that may not be fair, but that's the way it is. All right, so let's work on yours. Again, you can pause this video and start working on it, but and I'll again include a link to this. Sometimes people find it's easier to actually write this out. So you can actually print out the template, write things down, scribble them out, make notes, and then that might make it easier to transfer online to a Google Doc or to a Microsoft Word doc when you're done. And then again, when someone has proofread it, they've checked for spelling, you want to save that, obviously, but then also export that as a PDF. And you can do that from both Google Docs and Microsoft Word. If you don't know how to do that, check it out online. There's probably 1,000 videos to do that. But that's important because PDF documents can be read by nearly every type of computer system on nearly every device. It doesn't mess up your formatting when they download it to their phone or to their tablet. Plus, it can't be edited. So somebody can't mess with your resume and then send it on like it's yours. Kind of locks that into place. All right, let's quickly move on to interview. So let's say your resume is amazing and you got the big interview. Some of this is common sense, maybe no-brainers, but if I don't see it in 100% of the people I meet, it's probably worth talking about. Number one, be kind. Maybe you're just not a friendly person by nature. Maybe you're introverted or shy. You need to get over that for about 2 hours. Everybody you meet, from the receptionist to the janitor, everybody, I don't care what they're wearing or who you think they are, be kind to them. You never know what the hiring manager will do once you leave. They may ask the receptionist, hey, was so and so nice? Were they kind? And you want the answer to be yes, absolutely. So be friendly, put a smile on your face. Yes, the firm handshake is still king. Now, in this sort of post COVID environment, if you don't feel comfortable shaking hands, you can just tell the person that. But if you do go in for the handshake, make it firm. Practice it with a friend. I know that sounds goofy, but a limp, weak handshake sends a clear signal that you don't have confidence or that you're just not used to interacting with people, to be honest. In the same vein, maintain eye contact. Don't stare at people, obviously, but as you're talking to someone, make sure that you're looking them in the eye. Don't look down. Please don't have your cell phone out unless they're asking you to bring up something on your cell phone, of course. Make sure it's on silent. Don't even put your cell phone on vibrate. Put it on silent so there's absolutely no distraction. You want the interviewer to be thinking about you, not who's calling you or who's trying to get a hold of you. Clothes. Now, this is a interesting topic because maybe you're just going to interview for a warehouse job and you might say, well, I'm just going to dress like they are in the warehouse. I highly recommend you dress 1 or 2 steps better. So if they wear shorts and t-shirts and tennis shoes in the warehouse, you go in with slacks, maybe some dark shoes, and a nice button-up shirt. You don't need a suit unless you're going for a more professional job, but at the very least, if you can't afford those type of clothes, or it's just not practical, make sure you're clean and make sure your clothes are clean. Again, I know that's a touchy subject, but there's a lot of smart people that I've encountered that just have poor hygiene, and it sends the wrong message. And even if a recruiter or a hiring manager can get past some of that, once you get the job, your coworkers may not feel that way and you won't be in that job for long. So borrow some clothes, at the very least, get them washed, get them ironed, and make sure you show up in the best possible way that you can. And then last but not least, and this is one that a lot of people skip over because they're so worried about what the hiring person is going to be asking them, they forget to ask questions. So come with a list of questions, and I'll post those here later. But those questions should be about things that you really can't get from the job description. Don't ask about pay unless they didn't put it in the job description. Don't ask things that are already available because it'll just make it look like you didn't care, you didn't do any research. But ask them things like, Why did you work here? How long have you been here? What do you like about this place? What are some of the challenges? What's attendance look like for most of the people here? Just some questions that show that you're really interested and that you've got some critical thinking skills. That you don't have to ask CEO level questions, but just questions that show, hey, I'm interested in this and I'd like to know more since we're just on a date. All right, rounding out here, job search. Now, I could spend probably a couple hours talking about this, but the number one is obviously the internet. Um, Now you don't have to go right to ZipRecruiter or right to Indeed. You can simply search jobs online and Google will scrape all those websites and present them to you. Now it may not be as user friendly; it's tough to filter and things. But if you want to get a specific job and you want to get the immediate listings in your area, just simply going into Google is a great way to do it. Now, if you do go into ZipRecruiter and Indeed, and there's also like Craigslist and there's a bunch of others, make sure you know how to use the platform. I would recommend looking up videos from those vendors on how to best use it and getting some tips. So the pros for using Google or Indeed or ZipRecruiter is you can look at hundreds of jobs and do some filtering, almost like Amazon searching, and you can do that all in the comfort of your pajamas. The con or the bad side is that can be very time consuming and that can also be overwhelming because you don't understand a lot about the job. And kind of on the flip side, like me looking at 266 resumes, you can't really tell a lot just simply based on a couple words on the page. But as a tip, you can set up job alerts. So you can look for a job, and then a lot of those sites you can save that search, and then they'll email you when similar jobs become available. Another option besides the internet, or in addition to the internet, is employment agencies like Express. So a lot of pros for using an agency, and some of these might surprise you. Number one is there's no cost. Applicants coming in, there is no cost to you other than the time that you spend with us. One application makes you eligible for multiple jobs. So you're not just applying for one job. You may start that way, but once you're in the system for an employment agency, they'll contact you about other potential job matches. Now, some may hound you and call you all the time about any job. I know at Express, we're very careful to only contact you with jobs that you said match your pay, your skills, your availability, and those type of things. Plus, employment agencies usually pay weekly, some even pay daily, depending on the type of work. Now, there are some downsides to employment agencies when you compare them to other things. One is usually it's either temp or temp to hire. So there's a little bit more risk involved for you, and then usually you don't get the benefits until you get hired on at the company. But this also can be a pro because then you can try out, or evaluate the company before you decide to be hired on. Now, another option is to apply directly with the company. Sometimes they'll post on their career page, or maybe you'll see a sign driving down and you just pop in and they give you a website address. So this can be a good way too. There's usually less steps involved, not always. You may still have to go through multiple interviews. But the downside, and again, I get this feedback all the time, is you rarely get an interview or even a callback because so many people are trying to apply. Another benefit of using an agency is we have relationships with those companies, and so you're kind of getting the inside scoop or the inside track on those companies. Finally, last but not least, just some other general job tips. Hey, I think this goes without saying, but here it goes. Be truthful, be reasonable, and be specific. So by truthful, I mean don't exaggerate your resume. If you need buses to get to where you're going, don't say you have a car. If you didn't complete college, don't say you completed college, but you can say, hey, I attended college. I mean, these sound like no-brainers, but it's very tempting for people to exaggerate or to say things just to get the job. I'm here to tell you it never works out. You'll either get caught or it just won't work out because your skills and experience or transportation or schedule won't match what they really need. You may last a few days. It's just not going to work. So it's a waste of your time and everybody else's. So it's really in your best interest to be honest. Also, be specific. If you have a specific shift that you can work, then stick to your guns. Because again, if you try to stretch that, then you're going to lose the job. If you have to be out of the job by 5 and you say, "Oh, I can be out by 5 or 5:30 or 6," it's just not going to work out. So be specific. On that note, if you do happen to call an employment agency, highly recommend you start off with, "Hi, my name is Scott, and I'm looking for a first shift job in a manufacturing facility around $18 an hour on this side of town." I don't recommend calling and saying, "Hey, what jobs do you have?" Just like people, jobs aren't a vending machine, and you want to really get to the point of matching your skills and experience and your requirements with the job, versus just going through a menu of options and then hoping something sticks. So that'll just really save you time. When we get those calls, I mean, we're here all day. We're happy to answer those questions, but it really just takes a lot of time out of your day. So just a little tip there. Well, hopefully you found this useful. Please share it with a friend. Subscribe to the channel if you would like more updates like this. But I wish you the best of luck in your job search. Remember, brush up on that resume. Make sure it's accurate and complete. Prepare yourself for a dynamite interview so you can make your personality shine and get that job. And then if you need help with your job search, we can help you here. But there's a lot of resources out there if you use them correctly. Happy job searching. Bye.